Good evening and welcome to this regular meeting of the Council of the Municipality of North Perth. Our meeting date is Monday, February 13th, 2023. I'm Mayor Todd Kasenberg and I'll call this meeting to order. I ask the clerk to note our starting time for the minutes as 7 p.m. Councillors are in the chamber in Listowel, joined by the clerk and other staff who are with us tonight. We continue to use web conferencing technologies for some who will participate in this meeting, including Councillor Anstead. A warm welcome is extended to councillors, staff, delegations, and others who are with us, regardless of whether you're using technology or physically in attendance tonight. We begin this meeting with the playing of O Canada. Those in chambers, as able, are invited to stand. We acknowledge that we are on the traditional land of the Anishinaabe peoples. We wish to recognize the long history of Indigenous peoples in Canada and show our respect to them today. We recognize their stewardship of the land. May we all live with respect on this land and live in peace and friendship. Tonight's meeting is being streamed live on the Municipality of North Perth YouTube channel and will be available there after this meeting as an archived video. To those viewing this meeting via the YouTube channel, a warm welcome to you. To those present in the gallery today, by attending a public meeting of the Council, you are consenting to your image, voice, and comments being recorded. Anyone who is invited to speak will be recorded, and their voice, image, and comments will form part of the live stream. The chair and or the clerk have the discretion and authority at any time to direct the termination or interruption of live streaming. Such direction will only be given in exceptional circumstances when deemed relevant. Circumstances may include instances where the content of debate is considered misleading, defamatory, or potentially inappropriate to be published. Attendees are advised that they may be subject to legal action if their actions result in inappropriate and or unacceptable behavior and or comments. Thank you. At this time, I invite your decorum over the course of the coming meeting. I have regrets tonight from Councillor Johnston, who's feeling a little bit under the weather. Let us move to item 2.1 of our agenda pertaining to pecuniary interest. For the benefit of those unfamiliar with our council practices, provincial legislation requires councillors with a potential pecuniary or financial interest in any item at the council table to declare this interest and to remove her or himself from discussions and voting on the item. In accordance with recommended protocol, at this time I invite all councillors with a perceived pecuniary interest, including those who have declared in writing, to verbally advise the chair in public session and to submit documentation to this effect in writing to the clerk. Councillors are further reminded that should a potential conflict arise during the meeting, they may so declare and act at any point in the meeting. Colleagues, do any of you wish to make a declaration to this effect at this time? I'm the guy who has the declaration to make this evening. I will be absenting myself from participation in item 4.1 on our agenda. This is a delegation from the Atwood Lions Club because I am a member of the club and perceive the potential for a conflict of interest. Further, I will absent myself from item 13.1, the confirmatory bylaw. All participants are invited to speak when called upon by yours truly, serving as chair. Those participating remotely who wish to speak may draw the attention of the clerk through our conferencing technology's chat function. Remote participants are asked to generally maintain a mute state in the web conference until I recognize your right to the floor. If, when I do so, recognize I don't hear you because you are muted or having some technical difficulty, I will advise. Amazing, we're still there. Let us now focus on the people's business. I invite those in the chamber to silence and put away their phones. Regarding item 2.2 of our agenda, I have a motion before me for the adoption of the agenda for tonight's meeting that reads as follows: that the agenda for tonight's meeting be approved. Can I call for a mover? Councillor Andreessen, thank you, and Councillor Blazek. Be our seconder on this one. Any discussion or debate? Seeing none, let's have that vote. And that is carried, noting Councillor Johnston's absence. All right, thank you. That allows us to move to item 3 on our agenda, the so-called consent agenda. Consent items are placed on our agenda because they are believed to be non-contentious, yet they may warrant Council's recognition and/or action. Grouping them expedites our business. However, any councillor wishing to extract an item from the consent agenda for discussion, debate, and individual action may do so. There are 13 items on our consent agenda tonight, including the minutes of our last regular council meeting. Councillors, anything to extract here or any corrections you've noted for the minutes? All right, the chair recognizes Councillor Rothwell first. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Mayor Todd and Council. Item 3.12, the Town of Halton Hills repealed Bill 23, Build More Homes Faster Act. Just some comments about that for conversation, please.
Thank you, Councillor Rothwell. Councillor Nordham, I think I saw your hand raised. Let me just get your microphone. There we go.
Thank you, Mayor Kiesenberg and Council. I would like to extract items 3.8 and 3.11.
All right, anyone further before we drill into these items? All right, seeing none, I think if with Council's consent from a procedural perspective, we'll proceed to evaluate these additional items now at this point. Councillor Rothwell, I think we'll turn the floor over to you for item 3.12.
Thank you very much, Mayor Todd. Again, this is an issue which this council has expressed concern about the legislation regarding the Build More Homes Faster Act. There's been much speculation with respect to potential impact financially and otherwise on municipalities, and the report attached to this item from the Town of Halton Hills shows their estimation in terms of the impact on the development charges and their ability of the municipality to undertake the necessary servicing for new growth, which is supposed to pay for growth. I'm not going to suggest that we request staff to undertake a similar sort of estimation because, frankly, I don't want to waste their time. Even though the province of Ontario, the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing, has stated specifically that the province will make whole financially or otherwise, municipalities. I have my concerns about that. safe to say, I believe, at least in my opinion, that the impacts will be substantial for our municipality. Certainly not to the extent of the town of Halton Hills, which is a significant growth center when you look at their amounts, but we will be negatively impacted as a result of the Build More Homes Faster Act. And I think that's the crucial issue that I want this council to hear, and certainly our public to hear, and certainly in our budget debates or conversation where Councillor Nordham had the suggestion, and when we talk specifically about one other report tonight about a line to look at a tax or a line in terms of impact on our bills, I think it's important that we do show where those impacts will be. And it's a direct result of the Build More Homes Faster Act, and I continue my concern about that. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Rothwell. I didn't note an actionable, but I think CAO Snell, can you comment? I believe the county planning department is trying to do something around first cost estimating for the impacts of Bill 23. Can you offer comment on that?
I know the county has asked for some guesstimates, and that's the unfortunate part because development charges are growth driven, and even in the range of Halton Hills, it was quite a range between the bottom and the low of the impact. So it's going to be difficult, and I think as we talk to the budget, we can certainly provide a really good number of the year following what the impacts were on our budget. So I think that's, for accurate numbers, that's what we'll have to rely on. Also, as part of the presentation on the budget visiting session, we are going to include an ask in our RFP to look at those direct impacts that Bill 23 is going to have on the municipality of North Perth.
Okay, thank you. Is that helpful? Okay. And I will note, and some of you probably have seen this already, that AMO released a toolkit to support municipal action on Bill 23, including trying to mobilize the public, interestingly enough. So I think there's opportunities certainly for our council to show that leadership and the corporation show that leadership around expressing our concern, not our concern, our concerns, plural, with Bill 23. All right, thank you. Councillor Nordham, you have pulled 2 items. You're next.
Thank you, Mayor Kiesenberg and Council. As for 3.8, Huron County's call to action to review the Cannabis Act, I hope everyone has a chance to read it. So by no way is this call to action against or opposed to cannabis. It's more looking at some of the issues our neighboring county has been dealing with. With the Cannabis Act still being relatively new, I think it's important to look back at what is working and what is not, and what nuisances people have been dealing with. Because this could be a North Perth problem or already is. So I would like to offer support for that call to action. You might be thinking that weed is my theme tonight. So as for item 3.11, the county weed report for 2022, I spoke a little to this at our latest budget meeting, January 11, 2023. It's very important to keep up with improving our roadside ditch maintenance. I would like to highlight Marvin Smith's comments on the report. His observations were the township and county make serious effort to control noxious weeds on the roadside. We are seeing a lot more giant hogweed, sow thistle, ragweed, velvet leaf, thistle species. I personally saw quite a bit of Canadian fleabane in some of our ditches. So I'd like to emphasize we need to do more ditch mowing if possible, maybe possibly purchase a boom mower. So we as a municipality do our part to knock some of these weeds down so they don't reach the pollination or the seedling stage. Just to put some perspective in it, a Canadian fleabane plant can produce between 25 to 60,000 seeds, where a big plant can produce up to 200,000 seeds. Giant ragweed, 10,000 to 120. I bring these numbers up just because it's very frustrating as a farmer to drive down the road and see weeds that are as tall as me sometimes. And know that those seeds can later go into the fields. I'm not saying the municipality, we have to get rid of all the weeds, but we can certainly cut down our weed pressure. Under the Weed Act, we're liable to make sure that we're doing a good job. The yellow-face position, infestation of noxious weeds can significantly limit crop yields, while farmers can undertake measures to reduce weeds on their own farm. The presence of weeds on neighboring properties, including road allowances, can make on-farm weed control an ongoing problem. So, to sum it up, I think we're doing a good job, but we can always do a little better.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Nordham. If I'm following the bouncing ball then with regards to the County of Huron, you would like this council to endorse the position of the County of Huron per the letter that they've sent, the resolution that their council has passed with regards to cannabis. Have I got that right? So moved. Can I call for a seconder? Councillor Blazek will be our seconder on this one. Thank you. Any discussion or debate on this one? Deputy Clerk, how are we doing with that one? You got the rulings in there? All right, let's have a vote on that. And that is carried. Thank you. Next, then, if I am following your guidance here, my suggestion, based on what I heard, is that we ask staff for a report about how the municipality might intensify the activity around weed removal in rural ditches and rural spaces. Does that seem like a reasonable request at this point? That they'll bring forward what's feasible, what equipment would be needed, the costs, etc. Does that seem okay to you?
I think we can probably see it in the budget later on as well, or I could ask for a report tonight too.
Okay. A report might be helpful at this stage. I don't know, though. I can turn to CAO Snell. Do you see any reason not to invite a report at this point?
Thank you, Mayor. Well, certainly staff can bring back a report if that's a request of council. We've had this information before council before, so I don't think it should be that hard for operations to put the report together.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Andreessen, you want to weigh in on this?
Yes, perhaps a report could give us more information about costing, about different methods, and the possible budgetary impact that could be, and how they could include that in their budget. And then that could be further moved on to that budget process, if that's helpful, Mr. Mayor.
And certainly current activity, I think, would be important to understand what our current platform might be, as well, perhaps what the county is doing, if anything, on this one, so that we understand their role and how they play that role in this might be useful as well. So that stands okay. A call for a report, a motion then on the floor, moved by Councillor Nordham to ask for a staff report on the subject of weed maintenance in rural areas, seconded by Councillor Richardson. Thank you. Any discussion or debate? Okay, seeing none, let's have that vote. Thank you, and that's carried. And now that means we can turn back to the whole of the consent agenda. The usual resolution before me is as follows, that consent items 3.1 to 3.13 be received for information and the minutes of the January 30th, 2023 regular council meeting be adopted. Deputy Mayor Kellum will serve as our mover. Councillor Andreessen is our seconder. Thank you. Any discussion or debate? Seeing none, let's have that vote. And that is carried. Thank you very much. That moves us along to agenda item number 4. We have no public meetings for this evening's council session. With due caution resulting from my membership in the Atwood Lions Club, I have declared a potential conflict of pecuniary interest in item 4.1 on our agenda, which means I'm going to turn things over for the conduct of this item to the Deputy Mayor, as always, with appreciation for his service. Let me get your microphones here. Okay.
Yes, thank you. And please note that Mayor Kasenberg has declared pecuniary interest on 4.1, which brings us to our delegation this evening. Welcome, Tyler Martin. You have the floor.
Hello, thank you. Thank you, Deputy Mayor, members of council. I am Tyler Martin of the Atwood Lions. I am here tonight to talk to you about a proposed park pathway in Atwood. So a few years ago, the Atwood Lions set out on a mission to find our next steps, the next projects that we wanted to work on, the next things that we wanted to do for the community. One of those items is the pathway through the park. This pathway was voted on by the Lions to proceed, but no budget was set pending approval of all levels of the interested parties. Once we meet those approvals, then a committee and a budget will be set, and we will go forth with what we decide on. So the pathway. There we go. The pathway will go from the community center through the rows of memorial trees to the pool. It will join up the current pathway that is at the playground and the pavilion. And the pathway will be about 6 feet wide. It will be made of either stone dust or paving stones, something like that. We want to investigate our different options, what's going to be easy for maintenance, all that stuff. The purpose of the pathway is to provide a nice path to walk on, enjoy the trees and park, and the connecting link between those facilities. It also brings people the opportunity to enjoy the nature that's in the park. We plan on hopefully lighting it with a bollard light, park-friendly shrubs. So, in discussion with some experts in that field, they had some shrubs that won't get damaged, and if they do, they would grow back quickly. There'd be a possibility of park benches, maybe some fountains that could also spawn into further development in the area. And it is also, of course, a beautification project. So this is the view from the community center, looking down between the trees through to the pool. And this is in the opposite direction from the pool back to the community center. And then that's just a picture. If you've ever had a chance to be in the park during the Light the Park event, it's a great time to be in the park with all the lights. I have to apologize. This is the extent of my Photoshop capabilities. And this is just to give you an idea of what we're looking at. In addition to this picture would be the abutments. So the path would kind of come off the trail in between the trees, then that's where the park benches would be. There's approximately 25 feet between the trees. So with a 6-foot path, we're far away from getting within what I would call like the danger zone of hurting the trees. Okay. On the left, that's the light standard that's used in the park in Listowel. That is what's prescribed as the preferred light under the streetscape design. I took that picture. Those are great lights. Those are excellent lights. Those in the park in Atwood would be right in the middle of all the tree branches, so it won't really help us any. The picture on the right is just a kind of a standard bollard light that I had got off the internet, so something along that lines is what we would be looking for. But of course, that would be up to those that look after the streetscape design to come up with that. This is the back type park bench that's prescribed under the streetscape design. So that's we plan on having a few of those. If you go to the next slide. And then that's the backless bench. So that would go Probably between the pavilion and the pool, or the pavilion and the playground, so that you can sit on it in either direction. So again, just as kind of something for your imagination, this is a fountain that's available from a local distributor of those, so possibility of something like that, and the possible locations. So in the top left, that's right beside the community center. And the top right is between the pavilion and the pool, and in the bottom is in the middle of the park between the pavilion and the playground. This is the shrub. It's called a sweet spire. So again, if some kids were to run their bikes through it, or somebody tramples it, it's something that will grow back quick. It's hardy, and in some cases, it actually grows back better than what it was like before. And then again, another kind of the opposite end of the spectrum. This is a large fountain. Again, just for visual, just to think of ideas. And then this is one that I personally like. It kind of fits with the area. But as of right now, I have made a presentation to RAC. They were concerned about the location with it being so close to the trees. So I did consult with some professionals, Frank Sluice from the Listle Greenhouse, staff members here, talked to Richard Kiso. Neither one of those had any issues because we're not digging deep. It's just a pathway with some lights. Also, the spoils from the pathway would be used beside the path, so we wouldn't have to dig as deep. I also conducted a survey on Facebook just for some public consultation. So that survey ran for 10 days, and it had 170 votes. 165 of those votes were in favor, which is a 97% approval rating. And for councils, and the burden on the town would be the lights. These would be an LED light, so over the course of a year would probably cost about $15 in electricity. And then we would have to work with the town staff on if there's weeds, how do we mitigate that, how can we prevent that, and what can we do to fix that. And also, if we do proceed with the fountain, what type of fountain it would be, how much water would we use, would it be a recirculating system, or would it maybe tie into a splash pad or something like that that would use potable water. That's something that we would discuss with town staff. And we would kind of go from there. So we do ask for a resolution that council allow the Lions Club of Atwood to proceed with a pathway between the trees and the Atwood Lions Park, including abutments, bollard lighting as prescribed as an addition to the streetscape design, landscaping, and additional fixtures to improve the aesthetics of the park. Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation, Tyler. Council, at this time, I will entertain comments or first questions from any of you. Councillor Andreessen.
Yes, through you, Deputy Mayor. Thank you, Tyler. It's exciting to see the work that you're doing with your club. Really appreciate it. I just have a couple of questions. I'm just thinking back to when we did the rink, right? And making sure that there are things in place so that there's agreements, whether it's insurance or maintenance or upkeep of, certain aspects of this work. Are the Lions open to entering an agreement for, parts of this in moving ahead? What are your thoughts?
Thank you for the question. I would consider this park or this pathway to be similar in that respect to the current pathway that comes between the statues to the flagpole and over to the pavilion. So as far as like insurance-wise, that would be covered under the park insurance. I don't see the Lions assuming any risk in regards to that.
Secondary question. In terms of a fountain, you did talk about, if you went that far, you would
You might need an agreement though in terms of the upkeep of that because it might need to be winterized, all that kind of thing.
Yeah, and that is something that, again, a fountain isn't something that we have decided that, yes, we're going to do that.
Sure.
And if we do decide that, yes, we're going to do that, it's what does that look like? And in that case, then yes, we would work with the town staff. As an example, if it's a recirculating system, we'd probably want to put that in the basement of the pool and then what that would look like. And so that is something that we would have to discuss with the town staff.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Andreessen. Anyone else have any comments or questions? Councillor Richardson.
Thank you, Tyler. Thank you so much for the presentation, and I just would like to thank you and all of the Lions Club for everything that you guys do. Of all the members, like you're always adding such great additions to the community, and I think this is going to be another feather in your cap. And I really like the idea. All the other little details can be worked out at the time, but thank you so much for everything that you guys bring, that your group brings to the community, because it's enjoyed by everyone. So thank you so much. And I like the idea. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Richardson. Anyone else like to make comments or questions at this time? Councillor Rothwell.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor, and thank you, Tyler, for your presentation. And I got to see your presentation as part of Recreation Advisory Committee too, so I appreciate that, and certainly the work of the Lions has been spoken about here. In terms of maintenance, one other issue, and it hasn't been addressed here, but any winter idea of this being maintained in the winter, or would it be on the same basis as that pathway, as you say, that goes from the parking lot in through the Lions Gate and so on, is that it would not be maintained in the winter? Is that correct?
Yes, and in speaking with a few different people, there seems to be more downsides to maintaining it through the winter than there would be upsides. As an example, if we're spreading salt to keep ice down, do we really want to be dumping salt between the trees? Probably not. Another thing is there's lots of snowmobile activity around there. If a snowmobile was to go across the path, it'd probably damage the stones or, hit something, mess it up, something like that. So it's probably best not to maintain it through the winter. The only maintenance I could see is with some weeds.
Yeah, thank you very much. I appreciate that, and I think you've obviously thought of that, and I certainly agree with your points there. Probably, I suspect staff will suggest that there's probably signage to ensure that people realize that it's not maintained year-round. And as long as the public knows that, I think that addresses that issue. So thank you very much, and certainly if Council agrees, good luck. I think it's going to be a great project.
Thank you for your comments, Councillor Rothwell. Are there any other councillors who would like to make comments or questions at this time? I am seeing none. Sea of Snow, would you like to make comments?
Just looking at this, I'm not sure. I don't believe that we've dealt with the fundraising policy donation aspect. So certainly we'll have to have staff work with the Lions Club to fill out Schedule A as of Council's policy that was recently adopted under the fundraising donation policy. We can work with the Lions Club to make sure that documentation is filled out prior to the adoption by Council.
So we're asking for a defer this, or is it the Council's wish to go ahead with this resolution?
Certainly that's up to Council. I just wanted to let them know,
Okay.
let you guys know that the fundraising donation policy, I don't believe has been completed.
Thank you very much. Council, what is your wish? Or Councillor Duncan, you have a comment on this? Go ahead.
Yeah. Okay, thanks. Yeah, I just wondered, can we adopt it in principle, saying we support it tonight, pending all of the documentation being worked out between staff and the Lions Club?
Go ahead, Seal Snow.
I think that would be appropriate because I think probably part of the things that we're going to want to see in the fundraising donation policy is cost estimates that would allow the Lions Club to proceed. Because I believe I heard Tyler say they haven't got to that step yet. So that might be an appropriate step forward to keep the process moving.
So we're good to go with this resolution in principle? Okay, thank you very much. Any other councillors have questions or comments? Go ahead, Seal Snow.
in principle, pending the fundraising donation policy approval of council.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Council, so I do have a resolution at this time that the Council of the Municipality of North Perth approves the Lions Club of Atwood request to proceed with a pathway between the trees in the Atwood Lions Park, including abutments, bollard lights, as prescribed as an addition to the streetscapes design, landscaping, and additional fixtures to improve the aesthetic of the park, in principle of the donation policy. In principle. Pending in principle the donation policy. Moved by Councillor Rothwell, second by Councillor Richardson. Any other question? And that is carried. Thank you very much, and thank you, Tyler, for your presentation. We look forward to the Lions Club proceeding with this great design over in Atwood. Thank you very much. Yes. Please invite Mayor Kaysenberg back in.
I'll try that again. Thank you to Deputy Mayor Kellum for conducting that business. And that means we can move forward to item 5 on our agenda, reports from departments and key staff. We have no reports this evening from the CAO's department as item 5.1. Further, we have no report from the strategic initiatives portfolio. So that allows us to move from 5.2 to 5.3. Under item 5.3, we have 2 items tonight from the Corporate Services Department. As item 5.3.1, Council is presented with a first follow-up report from the recent budget visioning meeting. This report outlines staff intent with the items raised at the budget visioning meeting and proposes a series of resolutions to address matters which reach beyond budget or which require collaboration with other partners. Call on North Perth Deputy Treasurer Becky Belfour to review this report. Welcome, Ms. Belfour. The podium is yours.
Thank you, Mayor Kaysenberg, Council. So before you tonight is a report regarding the budget visioning registry is what we called it. So on January the 11th, Council met for the budget visioning session. Council was provided with a high-level presentation on the public engagement survey prior to, and then Council was very greatly presented us with some public concerns and suggestions for budget items. So we put together the various budgeting items and allocated them as we had seen or heard from Council. So with regard to carryover, whether it was critical right now, whether it provided benefit now or in the future, whether it was cost neutral, approximate comments or approximate budget, and then comments. So we met with senior staff, went through each line item individually. Some of them got grouped. I was thinking the weeds kind of got put into the mowing and control of the roadsides. So those different items are there for your review. There were some third-party requests as well, so we documented that. And a lot of these items were already either in a carryover or being looked at as we speak, with some of the presentations already presented to Council with regard to the housing initiatives, those kinds of things. So I do believe they will all be addressed in some regard, either with the motions this evening or within the budget presentations when we do the operating budget on March the 8th. Let me just see. With regard to the budget policy, we have a rating system in place. I know some comments were maybe made to look at some feasibility and impact and some ratings. Because the policy is already in place, we decided to stick with what's there this year, but after this budget presentation is done for 2023, I'd like to get council's input for 2024 and how we could improve on our rating with the suggestions coming forth with the registry. So that being said, the financial impact will come with the presentation of the 2023 budget. That being said, any questions? I don't know if you wanted to review line by line or how you would like to. You all have the presentation, so if there's any questions with regard to those, you can let me know.
Yeah, I think the register was a helpful tool for us, and so council has done its diligence in reviewing that. Let me see if there are any questions or first comments about this. Certainly we can appreciate that what you did, what staff did, is look at all of the items that came from budget visioning. Some of those actually don't have significant play with the budget. They are things that represent policy change or whatever, and I think you've corralled a nice response to council's requests that evening. In fact, pointing out which ones do need other kinds of action beyond just being included in a budget. So, thank you for that. Questions or comments, colleagues? Anyone have anything you want to look at more carefully? Okay, so fortunately, staff was quite wise in putting together a series of resolutions that related to some of the activities that were not really budget items, but that were policy or collaboration items, and we're going to take them one by one. That's what we're going to do. So let's dig into those as I have them here. The first resolution as follows, that the Council of the Municipality of North Perth send a letter to the County of Perth to start discussions for solutions to traffic flow and congestion on Perth Line 86. Any questions or comments about the intent of this action? All right, can I call for a mover? Councillor Nordham and Councillor Blazek will be our seconder. Thank you. Any discussion or debate on this one? Let's have a vote on that. And that's carried. I'm sure the county's going to love us for that. Next up then is another resolution related to housing. That the Council of the Municipality of North Perth directs staff to communicate with the City of Stratford Social Services Department requesting data on the number and location of supportive and or affordable housing units in the department's service area and requesting additional future units in North Perth. Can I call for mover on this one? Councillor Rothwell, thank you. And Councillor Andreessen will be our seconder. Any discussion or debate, questions about that one? Seeing none, let's have that vote. And that is carried. The next one deals with policing, and as follows, that the Council of Municipality of North Perth requests that the Ontario Provincial Police, North Perth, provide their regular updates on the enforcement activities within North Perth. I think we mean their enforcement activities within North Perth. Minor wording change. Moved by Councillor Duncan, thank you. Seconded by Councillor Blazek. All right, any discussion, debate, or questions on this one? Councillor Rothwell.
Thank you, Mayor Todd. And through you, is the intent of this resolution is those updates will come directly through to council as opposed to our committee, Police Services Board? Is that the intent? If so, I think we should say through to council. That's my only issue.
I agree. I think that it probably should say provide, I don't know if it's their regular updates or just regular updates to the council on their enforcement activities within North Perth. Does that seem okay with mover? Mover was where? Matt, that okay? And okay, thanks. So thank you. Good improvement there. Any other questions or comments on this one? All right, let's have that vote. Okay, and that is carried. The next one relates to physician funding and recruitment, and is as follows: that the Council of the Municipality of North Perth sends a letter to the North Perth Recruitment Committee regarding the current framework for the physician funding and investigation of the new funding formula based on hospital usage by municipality. This one feels a little awkward in its wording. CEO Snell, do you want to clarify what you think the intent is here?
I think the intent is to follow more along the formula that's being used by the Wingham Recruitment Committee, where a portion or any municipalities that use the services of the local hospital pay into the recruitment committee. Currently, right now, North Perth is the only municipality paying into the listable recruitment committee. So I think the intent is that we would request that a similar process be set up, similar to Wingham's, and that we would ask the recruitment committee itself to seek additional funding from the other municipalities in the surrounding area.
Okay, that's a little helpful. That's not exactly how I read this, so maybe we need to have another look at this one. The current framework for physician recruitment activities funding, is that what we're talking about?
And I might even declare it as healthcare recruitment, just because I know they do more than recruit physicians.
Yeah. Healthcare professional. Recruitment funding, and investigate. Do we want to investigate? Are we investigating? Are we advocating for a change? What is it? Would we be happy if no change came forth? Maybe that's the question that we have to ask, because that might indicate whether we're investigating versus advocating. Councillor Andreessen, you got some suggestions?
Kaysenberg, yes. I'm thinking appealing to our neighboring municipal partners to contribute to the healthcare recruitment funding. Does that make sense? So it's an appeal.
Okay. I'll try it. Just give me a second here. All right, let's see if this works. That the Council of the Municipality of North Perth sends a letter to the North Perth Recruitment Committee regarding the current framework for healthcare professional recruitment funding. And it probably should be like a second one, and appeal to our relevant municipal neighbors to contribute to the physician recruitment funding. I won't call it a fund per se, because it's risky. They might say there's no fund or something, right? So funding, I think, is the right word at the end. Anyone else have comments on this? The intent is to find out what the current framework is and to suggest to our neighbors that they need to pony up, is what I'm understanding. Councillor Andreessen, go ahead.
If I can speak to that, Mayor Kaysenberg, at a recent presentation to the Economic Development Committee, the Physician Recruitment Committee indicated that in the past, the contributors to the Huron side included, partnering municipalities, whereas with North Perth, the only contributor was North Perth Listowel. So the whole idea would be to have additional funds for this purpose come from our partners, our partnering municipalities, in order to actually increase the funding for this purpose, because our share actually is much lower than what the Huron County portion is, which is kind of embarrassing. I would prefer that we, as a municipality, along with our partners, would also pay our fair share, because we want to have the services of healthcare workers just as much as Huron County does. So that's the scope and the hope of what this resolution was for and why. Yeah.
I don't think we have it yet, to be honest. I'm still looking at the words, and I wish we could put it up on the screen. My concern is that the first clause of this motion actually says at this point, we're going to send a letter to the North Perth Recruitment Committee regarding the current framework, but it doesn't say anything about what we're going to tell them or suggest to them or ask them or harass them about. So I think if we're going to send a letter to the North Perth Recruitment Committee, we should have a purpose. My impression was that our purpose was to actually see whether they needed more funding, right? So I see CAO starting to wave his hand. So that's probably a good thing. CAO Snell, if you would please help us see the light through this one.
So my understanding is that the Healthcare Recruitment Committee itself would make the presentations to the surrounding municipalities. So I think that's really our ask, is that they would make the request to the surrounding municipalities, including North Perth, once we have the numbers for our share, which I have a pretty good idea what they are, already speaking from the hospital. But the recruitment committee itself would make that ask to the other municipalities, perhaps with our support.
Thank you. Okay. I think it sounds like this now then, if that's right. The Council of the Municipality of North Perth sends a letter to the North Perth Recruitment Committee regarding the current framework for healthcare professional recruitment and recommending an appeal to our relevant municipal neighbors to contribute to the physician recruitment funding.
Oh, yeah.
I think that starts to tell the story that we would like to have told, no? It shows an ask, yeah, exactly. You send them a letter, not that helpful. Councillor Rothwell, suggestions,
and just,
comments?
I think that sounds good, Mr. Mayor. And perhaps we would want to, show the cards a little bit more and say on a proportional share basis.
Oh, yeah, okay.
I think part of it's there, but it's still on, like, just because, say 10 residents of Perth East come, it doesn't mean you get the full, amount that North Perth would have, which would have, X number of patients, for example, right? So on a proportional share.
Okay, that's helpful too. So the last clause then is, recommending an appeal to our relevant municipal neighbors to contribute to the physician recruitment funding on a workable proportional basis. The devil's in the details. Go ahead, Ms. Belfour. Sorry to keep you.
Was, I guess, yeah, some of my wording. So it was to find out the current framework and then come up with some sort of new funding formula based on that framework, and then approach the outside parties, the other municipalities. So I think that was sort of the intent of what was.
Okay, so
Yes.
I can add another word in here. It's getting better and better for the deputy clerk here. She does a lot of work tonight. Exactly. That the Council of the Municipality of North Perth sends a letter to the North Perth Recruitment Committee requesting elucidation. Boy, that's a big word, but that's the best word I can think of the current framework for healthcare professional recruitment funding. So we're asking them, point one, how does it work, right? And then suggesting that they may want to talk to some of our neighbors and find a workable formula. Okay, anyone else? Councillor Richardson, please.
Would you mind reading that back once more? And I'm not trying to,
Yep.
just to get that, because all I was going to make a suggestion, just a segue for that, is like instead of the current framework, changing it, maybe just wordsmithing it that to existing framework, maybe not without
Okay.
that other word you had mentioned, but just to hear it fluid once more.
Who would have imagined we'd become so creative about our wording here tonight on this one? All right, that the Council of the Municipality of North Perth sends a letter to the North Perth Recruitment Committee requesting elucidation of the existing framework for healthcare professional recruitment funding and recommending an appeal to our relevant municipal neighbors to contribute to the physician recruitment funding on a workable, proportional basis. And CEO Snell is smiling broadly. He's did we get there? He thinks we got there. Okay. Councillor Richardson thinks we got there, and that's okay.
I think so.
Okay. Councillor Rothwell?
Just one thing, you said physician recruitment in the second part of that, but I think you might want to say, like we changed it in the first part, we said health care.
Yeah.
So I think we just want to be consistent, that's all.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Good suggestion. See, we collaborate really well together. We could teach Ottawa and Toronto a few lessons. All right. We have a resolution. It might be Frankenstein, I don't know. But let's give it a try here. Do I have a mover for this one? Councillor Blasick, thank you, bless you. And Councillor Richardson will be our seconder. Any discussion or debate? Seeing none, let's have that vote. And that is carried. Thank you. That was fun. And now we have one more, which is, of course, the receipt of the report that Ms. Belfour has brought forward on behalf of staff as follows. The Council of the Municipality of North Perth accepts the report entitled 2023 Budget Visioning Registry as presented. Can I call for mover in that? Councillor Gordon? Sorry? Oh, yeah, that's a good idea. Councillor Anstedt, you with us? Would you like to be our mover for this one?
Yes, good evening, Council. Yes, I would move that motion. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, and our seconder will be Councillor Nordham. Yeah, I see that. I see how this is playing out. Okay, any discussion or debate? Thanks for that reminder. Seeing none, let's have that vote. And that is carried as well. Ms. Belfour, thank you for that report. But don't go away because you have item 5.3.2 as well. This is a usual request. It's an annual request for the authorization to borrow money to support the operating expenses of the corporation. For our new colleagues, it's an action which is undertaken should circumstances arise which so warrant, but in fact, this utility is almost never used. So I'll welcome Ms. Belfour to share a little bit more about that and bring everyone into the loop.
Thank you, Mayor Casemer, Council. This report's from Fran Hale, our Manager of Corporate Services, Treasurer, and it's regarding the 2023 temporary borrowing bylaw. This is a housekeeping bylaw, as the Mayor indicated, that establishes temporary borrowing capabilities as part of our banking agreement. We've, again, like the Mayor indicated, we've not used this in the past. It's just they're implemented at the beginning of every year, just in case. Our current banking agreement is with Canadian Imperial Bank of Commerce, and our temporary borrowing available is $5 million to provide cash flow for current operating expenditures until tax revenues have been received. We have a good influx of cash flow, so things just follow through as normal. So that recommendation is before you.
Thank you, Ms. Belfour. Any questions or comments? We have a resolution as follows, bylaw number 15-2023, being a bylaw to authorize the borrowing of money to meet 2023 operating expenditures prior to tax revenues being received, be introduced, read, and considered read a first, second, and third time, and be finally passed. Said bylaw be signed by the mayor and the clerk and sealed with the seal of the corporation. Moved by Deputy Mayor Callum. Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Rothwell. Any discussion or debate? Seeing none, let's have that vote.
I'm in favor. My e-scribe isn't working. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Anstedt. And so with his vote, that is carried. Thank you, Ms. Belfour. Pleasure to have you with us tonight. All right, and we can move forward then. We have no reports from the Programs Department tonight as item 5.4. We also have no reports from the Facilities Department tonight as item 5.5, which means we're turning to item 5.6 on our agenda, reports from the Manager of Environmental Services. As item 5.6.1, our Manager of Environmental Services, Mr. Mark Hackett, will present to Council about the mandatory 2022 annual and summary water reports for the municipality. This is important stuff. Welcome, Mr. Hackett.
Thank you, Mayor Kaysenberg and Council. So a lot of council has seen these reports before. It's something I do each year. There are two types of reports that I'm required to produce. One of them is an annual report, and the other one's a summary report. So I'm just going to work my way through them and have a look at each of them briefly, and I'm going to go through the order that they're in your agenda. So that starts with the annual reports, and these are the more comprehensive reports that you will see. And starting with the Atwood one, I'll just go briefly through each one. It starts with a description of the system, and then one of the more important parts are, were there any significant expenses incurred? And in Atwood this year, in 2022, we replaced the pressure tanks at the Atwood Well House for $18,500. The next part would be if there are any reportable issues, and there were none, or no non-compliances. And then as we go through the meat of the document, it talks about all the different microbiological testing that took place in the raw water, the treated water, and out in the distribution system. It talks about the turbidity sampling that was done in the raw and the chlorine testing that was done in the treated water. And then it gets into a great deal of information about the inorganic parameters that were tested, and then following the summary of the organic parameters that were tested. So that's what's in a report. That's the Atwood one. Looking at Gowanstown, it's the same type of report. There were no significant expenses. There were no any issues that had to be reported. The micro and inorganic parameters are all listed there. I would note on the last page of the Gowanstown one, and you'll see that there's arsenic listed 4 times, because that's one of the parameters that has changed over the last couple of years, where the limit went from 25 to 10. And if you, in your testing, come up with where you're above half the maximal allowable concentration, you have to move to quarterly sampling. So that's the quarterly sampling you see for the Gowanstown well, and that will go on forever. Looking at the Listowel well system, again, there were a few expenses there. There was a new variable frequency drive installed at well 6 for $7,000. We also purchased a spare one for redundancy at the other Listowel wells. And then we also did the well 4 well and pump maintenance, and that was $22,000. Again, the body of the report is all the different testing that's done in all the different wells. There's wells 4, 5, and 6. And again, going to the last page, again, arsenic was one that had come up in the Listowel well number 4, just barely over the half MAC, but it's something, again, we're due quarterly. There's only 3 listed here because it was out of service for a couple months while we were doing all the well service on it. It's back in service now, and it'll return to quarterly sampling for that. And the last one of those then is Molesworth. We installed some new yard hydrants there for sampling purposes, and that was $8,000. And basically the rest of the testing is as required. There were nothing that really stood out, and all of the reports, all the testing that we're required to do is done, and it's all documented here. So that's the annual reports. Then we have the summary reports, and they're just a little bit of a different look at the water systems, and basically they're reviewing how much water was produced at each well, and they highlight if there were any non-compliances. So starting with the Atwood system again, there were no non-compliances in 2022. And then it looks at the 2 different wells there. They have the Danbrook well and the Smith well, and what water was produced. And then the most important page would be the last page, which is those 2 wells combined. And in it, you would be able to see that the average flow per day in cubic meters was 70.56, and that is 11, almost 12% of the capacity of the well system there. And that on the next column is the maximum flow on any given day, and that was 116.8 cubic meters, and that was almost 20% of the capacity of the system. And that's all that's in those reports. I'll go through Gowanstown next. Gowanstown's our smallest system. There's only 17 homes. There were no non-compliances in 2022. They only produced about just under 9 cubic meters per day, which is 12.6% of the system capacity. And then on the highest day at that well, they produced just over 31 cubic meters in a day, which was 44% of the system. In Listowel, there's the 3 wells. There were no non-compliances. Again, if you go to the end of that report, it has all of the wells combined, and we can see on that one that the average flow per day was 22% of the system capacity. I did notice I had a little bit of an error on the maximum flow day, and it should have been 52.4% of the system on that maximum flow day. And finally, we have the Molesworth well. Again, it's one of our smaller systems. I believe there's 42 homes on it. There were no non-compliances. They average about 18, just almost 19 cubic meters per day, which is just under 10% of the capacity of the system. And their maximum day was almost 25% of the system's capacity. So those are the reports. I know I briefly went through them. There's a lot of data in there, a lot of information. They're available to the public. They will be once they've been approved and received by council, and then they're on our webpage posted for everyone if they have any interest in looking at it. I could take any questions about those.
Thank you, Mr. Hackett. Just a quick question. The resolution suggests that we receive this report for information. Do we have to actually approve this report, or is it receipt for information?
What I have to do is show that I've given it to council for their information. That's
Okay.
all that's required.
Thank you. Just wanted to be sure. Any questions or first comments on this one? I'm not seeing any, so we have a resolution as follows: that the Council of the Municipality of North Perth receives for information the 2022 Water System Summary Reports and the 2022 Annual Water Reports. Can I call for a mover? Councillor Richardson, thank you. Councillor Anstett, will you be our seconder in this one?
Yes, I would second that. Thank you.
Thank you. Any discussion or debate? Seeing none, let's have that vote. And that is carried. Thank you. Next up then is item 5.6.2. Our attention is drawn to a request from the Middle Maitland Rejuvenation Committee to support their annual cleanup of the river area in the municipality. There is a proposition that council again supports the initiative by providing a truck and waiving tipping fees at the Elma landfill for the associated events. Mr. Hackett, you want to comment on this one?
Sure. The Middle Maitland Rejuvenation Committee is a volunteer group that works to improve the water quality in the Middle Maitland River. They've done a number of things over the past, and in the last year, one of the big items that they were involved with, along with the Maitland Valley Conservation Authority, Listowel District Secondary, I think they were grade 9 students, and also the local 4-H club came out this year, and we planted 294 trees and shrubs at the wastewater treatment plant. And then they were also involved with the tree planting, the Listowel TD Tree Day, where 350 trees were planted at the Steve Kerr Memorial Arena complex there. So, and they also hosted the annual Maitland River cleanup that took place in April of 2022. So moving forward, as the mayor mentioned, we do have a cleanup that is being scheduled for the annual Maitland River cleanup on Saturday, April 29th, and there's a rain date of Saturday, May 6th. And as in previous years, they're asking that we provide a truck for picking up the garbage and also to waive the landfill fees. I'd also note that we have some more tree plantings scheduled at the wastewater treatment plant for both the spring and fall this year, and also probably next year as well. We have some areas that we wanted to do, and it works out really well. And again, we'll be working with the Listowel High School students for that. Once we get going, the details will be posted on the municipal website and through our social media outlets to encourage residents in the area to get involved in this valuable volunteer initiative.
Thanks, Mr. Hackett. Is there any reason that council would object to considering this becoming sort of a blanket motion moving forward and allowing every time that this event is organized, the support that's requested from the Middle Maitland Rejuvenation Committee?
I did try to, sorry, I did try to do the wording of this one that way, that as we did the previous one.
Yeah,
it
looks like it's got that that sort of sense of ongoing to it. Okay. Any questions or first comments? All right, I have a resolution then that the Council of the Municipality of North Perth supports the Middle Maitland Rejuvenation Committee annual Maitland River cleanup by supplying a truck to transport the waste collected to the Alma landfill and by waiving the landfill tipping fees at each planned event. So there's the little magic line that allows us to move that forward. I know Councillor Duncan's eager to get in on this one, so we'll call him the mover. Councillor Rothwell, you can be the seconder. Thank you. Any discussion or debate? Seeing none, let's have that vote. And that is carried. And we know that group does such good work in our community. We're grateful for all that they're doing. Thank you, Mr. Hackett, for your reports tonight. I think that moves us along. Do we have another one?
I have one more.
You have one more. We do have one more. I was thinking we were moving along. All right. We have item 5.6.3, which is the 2022 annual wastewater report for the municipality. Mr. Hackett's still in place, so off he goes.
Yeah, so we have an ECA, or an environmental compliance approval, that dictates what we have to do with regard to the wastewater treatment plant. And one of the requirements is to produce an annual report. I've outlined in it all those different things that we're required to report on, but it's probably easier just to take a couple minutes and just go through the actual annual report for 2022. So the first part of the annual report simply goes over the different monitoring data. We can see that we had a total influent flow into the wastewater treatment plant of 2,433 megaliters, or 6.676 megaliters per day. And the plant itself has a design capacity of 9.03 megaliters per day. So it's it's about 76%, I believe, of design capacity. And then we look a little bit further down that page at the different influent qualities. So we measure what's coming into the plant. We look at the CBOD, the total suspended solids, total phosphorus, and total colloidal nitrogen, or TKN. Looking over on the next page, we look at what some of those results were, and what the different concentrations and what the loading was on the plant. And it's sort of summarized on the page 5. There's a little table there, and it shows that. So we looked at what was coming in and now what is going out. For CBOD, we were able to remove 98.9% of the concentration. The total suspended solids, 98.8%. Total phosphorus, 96.6%. And TKN, 94.3%. So that sort of summarizes the effectiveness of the treatment. The second part is their operational upsets, of which there were none to report. The part 3 talks about maintenance activities, and I won't go through those, but there's just listed some of the things that have taken place at the wastewater treatment plant throughout 2022. Part 4 is about quality assurance or quality control measures, and that's simply a little outline of the sampling that we do and how we go about doing it. Part 5 talks about monitoring equipment, calibration, and maintenance. So all the equipment that we use, a spectrophotometer out at the wastewater treatment plant that they do a lot of the testing on, and all of the flow meters and things like that are calibrated and tested each year to make sure they're accurate. The part 6 is one of the more interesting ones. It's about meeting design objectives. So when we talk about different objectives that are set out in the ECA, they have limits, and then they have what they design objectives, what they'd like you to hit. If you are out on a limit, then you have to report it, but not so with the design objectives. So those are what we strive to do the best we can do. So in last year, the CBOD design objective was achieved 8 out of 12 months. The suspended solids was achieved 6 out of 12. Total phosphorus was achieved 8 out of 12, and ammonia was reached 11 out of 12 months. I would note that's probably not as good as you've seen in past ones. If you would recall, we did have to we were doing a stress testing of the system as part of the efforts to have our hydraulic flow increase, the re-rating. And so when you're doing that, you put the plant under stress, which is you operate the plant under half of its abilities. So you take half of it out of service and you run all the flow through one side. So you're really pushing hard on the capabilities of the plant at that time. So that's why a couple of those months that was done in the spring and fall for a period of time, why we probably didn't reach as good as we've done in the past. Part 7 is about the how much sludge was generated and anticipated volumes. And then there's a chart that follows on the next page that shows what dates we hauled sludge on, what sites they went to, and the volume. So we did 44,177 cubic meters of sludge was applied to area farms. Part 8 has to do with summary of any complaints received, and there were none in 2022. There were no bypasses or spills in 2022. The next part 10 is about the septic receiving station, and it's just a little bit of a summary in a chart on the next page of the different sources of imported, what we call imported wastewater, what kind of flows we see on an average day, and then the loading in BOD and TKN. And the rest of it, 11, 12, 13, 14, we don't really have any comments on that. It doesn't really affect us, but we're required to put a little blurb in there anyway. So that is the wastewater treatment report for annual report for 2022.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Hackett. I'll draw your attention to just two little things, I think. On the top of page 4, in the column, the third column in the table from the left, it says March 32nd. At least that's what I think it says. And you might want to just correct that. And then on page 5, I would like to understand the intent of the first, second, third, fourth, fifth bullet, new OR piece. No, it's the one before that, the fourth bullet, sorry. Both filters, sand replacement, and chemical treatment to porous plates. It's sort of an incomplete thought from what I can tell.
Sure. So that one's referring to, there are 2 filters at the wastewater treatment plant that are one of the last parts of the treatment of the wastewater that goes through it. They consist of porous plates over individual cells where the water goes through, but it also goes through sand, and they do get bunged up over time, and they need to have the sand replaced and the porous plates cleaned. So that's what that is referring to, the cleaning and the replacement of the sand.
Okay, it reads a little funny.
Okay.
But okay, any other questions or comments about this report? Councillor Duncan? Go ahead.
Mark, did I hear you right when you said we were at 76% of daily capacity?
Yes, that would be the number, yeah.
Is that a concerning number with the increased development we're seeing here in North Perth?
Yes. It's an interesting topic, and we are actually going to have our engineer come in and talk to council a little bit about capacities and our efforts to have that capacity increased. It's interesting enough that when you look at, we were looking at some information from, I think it was 2003, I'd have to double check what it was, but our actual flows have not really changed all that much since that time, because of people being more conscious about water use, more water conservation. Even though we've grown like crazy, we're just barely over what the annual flows were back. Chris, I don't remember if you remember what year that was. I can get that information. That'll be part of a presentation. So we look at the uncommitted reserve capacity. So we look at all the different subdivisions and what we're expecting to see as it builds out. And that's why we've been working for many years towards making sure there's capacity at the wastewater treatment plant so that you can have the growth that we are looking at. We haven't been successful at this point with all the work we've done so far. We still have some work to be done, and you'll see some of that come through in the capital projects this year. We're looking at some work to our clarifiers, and then in 2024, looking at the filters themselves, because they're 30 years old. Some of this equipment is original equipment. So there's a few things left that we still need to do. Typically, the ministry gets concerned when you hit 80%, and they will come out and they will say, hey, you're at 80% of your flows. You need to do something about this. What are you going to do? Well, we've been doing that for a number of years been moving forward with trying to do the upgrades, and we've done. I think it was $15 million previously, and we have more work to do to make that plant capable of handling the flows. And not just even in the next little while. We need to look 30 years down the road, because if growth continues, and the plant's been built that way, there can be another aeration cell added on, there could be another digester added on when the time comes. But those are big projects as well. It's a significant amount of money over the years to come. But we've been working hard to be able to increase our hydraulic rating of the plant. It's not an easy process. We're finding it more difficult than we expected, to tell you the truth. The reception that we've got from the ministry has not been what we were hoping for with all the work that we've done.
Okay. I guess when I hear you say the significant cost to add another cellar digester with the current climate of government and the repeal of development fees, that's definitely a little worrisome. That the sewer and water users would have to carry that expansion for more development if we needed to go that.
Yes, and one of the things we're looking at doing next year is doing a complete water and wastewater rate study to make sure part of the requirements of our municipal drinking water license is to have a financial plan, and we have a plan. It goes until 2025. We need to have that updated. And part of that will help us look at what are all the different costs in both water and wastewater, because we do a wastewater one as well at the same time. And what kind of revenues do we need to be able to get to not just the operations, but these future projects that will be coming on board. We've done a lot of work already to be able to be where we are, I think, to tell you the truth.
If I'm following this, I think the concern, I'm becoming more concerned as Councillor Duncan is, because there's sort of an intersection between what's happening in the planning and land development activity area and this area of wastewater management. And I'm wondering if we're working with, there's sort of sharing of assumptions and information between these groups, if you will, and looking at the trajectory of growth that we've seen, which I think to some degree has been unexpected. We grew much faster against the last growth plan. We finished the growth that was projected in 5 years, and it was supposed to be a 10-year plan. So there's a little bit of concern that's starting to emerge, I think, and we're hearing that all due diligence is being taken, and that's no surprise. But I just want to make sure that we're doing that sort of intersection of planning and the demand that is coming, and the activities to bolster our wastewater management processing and so forth. CAO Snell has had his hand up for 5 minutes now, so I think we're going to let him have a crack at this, all right? We'll get to you, Councillor Richardson. Hold on. Okay, CAO Snell, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Mayor. And I think to answer your latest question, we actually do the reserve capacity calculations annually, so we monitor this regularly, and if it's, in fact, I know Mark does it more than annually just for his own reference, but we have to produce it annually at minimum, as well as, and certainly the staff, including Mark, didn't take necessarily credit for this too. Part of our issue over the years has been infiltration issues as well into the system. So if you look in July, when it's dry and there's no rainwater or moisture in the ground, we probably only use about 30% of the capacity of the plant. It's during peak flows and maybe 40% is a better number, but during peak flows in the springtime and the high melts and the high rains, that's when we have a lot of problems. And we've done a lot of work in the last 20 years to improve that picture. That's one of the reasons why that water meters is one of the reasons why we haven't seen an increased capacity with all the growth and even the addition of the village of Atwood during that same time as well. So we need to continue to work on that aspect at the same time as what Mark talked about. We're well in the planning stages of looking at this plant 30, 40, and 50 years down the road, so if the community does keep growing. And we hope to have a presentation to council in the next month, 2 months, to kind of demonstrate all this to council.
Okay, thank you. I think, I'm sure that many of us feel that anxiety around the growth projections of the community, right? We've seen explosive growth. Is it going to continue? And at what cost, per Councillor Rothwell's common concern about Bill 23? So, there's a lot of variables, it seems like, that are in play and being juggled. And I hope that I look forward to the presentation that comes to council to sort of help us better understand that big landscape. Councillor Richardson is next.
Thank you, and through you, Mayor Kazenberg. Is it possible, Mark, and I certainly won't hold you to this, to put an approximate user value, like you say, 74%? How many users is on between 74 and, say, the head-scratching moment if you happen to hit 80%? Is there like a finite number you could put on there, like it's another 3,000, another 1,000 homes? Like, is there? Not going to. I don't expect a magic number, but just asking.
I don't know that number. That's something we try to do through the analysis we do each year, and that's one of the things that has been sort of surprising that I was talking about, that the amount per household is actually going down. It's actually moving downwards, which is what we want to see. I think the number is 0.65 cubic meters per household that's being used, and that's actually on its way down, and that's a big part of having enough space in the future. And then, like Chris mentioned, we have a project that we're working on we're getting some pricing on. If we can stop some of the infiltration into the system during those wet times, and we put in, I forget the name of it, but they're like a flapper gate kind of thing, a duck-billed gate that stops flow from coming back in when some of these outlets get underwater when the river's really high. And I think it's made a substantial difference to how much flow is coming into the plant. Even this most recent rain event that we had, where the river was up quite high, our flows peaked, but they didn't stay up like they usually do. And that's a really substantial change. Like even the pump station, the main pump station only was running one pump, full speed, mind you, instead of the two, but it was still able to handle it all with one. And we never really saw that before. So I think some of those efforts are making a difference. And I would rather spend more money trying to fix more of those situations, because it has a big bang for that buck. One of the other things we did it's been a couple of years now, but we did a survey in the sewers where they did put in monitors, and we found some of the more problem areas, and we have videos of all these different areas as well. So this past year, we just did one that we found that had like a fist-sized hole in one of the sewer pipes. It was over near the bridge on Davidson, when they were doing the work there, and they were able to try a relatively, it's not new, but we'd never tried it, but where you don't have to dig up the road and you don't dig anything up. They actually go in with a sealant around something, and it seals the hole instead of digging everything up. There's a price to it, but it also, you're not having all those costs of digging up a road, having to replace concrete and curbs and all that, and then sometimes even finding it when you're digging it up. So we've been trying a few things like that, and we have staff reviewing them to see if there's some other areas where we can find some smoking guns, so to speak, and maybe fix some of those up. We'll also be looking at some point. There's some older areas that aren't as well good, and we'll have to do some work on those. But that's sort of in the long-range plan of some of these have already been addressed. Like when we did the NERT project, that's been a few years now, but it was 32 blocks in the Northeast reconstruction project. That made a substantial difference. One of the other things that made a difference since 2005 was water meters going in. We still are barely using the same amount of water in Listowel producing that during the well. Those numbers that I gave you, they're almost identical to they're still lower than they were in 2002, 2003, if you can believe that. They're still, because people used to run their taps and run their water sprinklers, and it was a flat rate. And once the water meters came in, it got expensive to do. and people, and that's what we're really hoping, even with the new water meter system going in and with the dashboard that's going to be available to the public. People, if you're interested, you can go on and see where you're using water, or if you have a leak, you should get notified. So there's a lot of really good things that can come from it, which should again help with water conservation efforts, I think.
Okay, what I heard was that you're about to put the sewer videos on YouTube for everyone's entertainment. That's what I heard.
Yeah, if you want to see them, I could do that.
Couldn't resist, sorry. All right, any other questions or comments about this one before we consider the resolution? I'm not seeing any, so we have a resolution as follows: that the Council of the Municipality of North Perth receives the 2022 Annual Wastewater Report for information. Moved by Deputy Mayor Callum, thank you. Seconded by Councillor Nordham. Any discussion or debate? Let's have that vote. And that is carried. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Hackett, as always. We turn now to item 5.8, reports from the Development and Protective Services Department. As item 5.8.1, Council is invited to recommend the approval to the County of Perth Land Division Committee or its designate of an application requesting consent to sever lands in the Wallace Ward of the Municipality of North Perth, owned by parties Vandenhoven and represented by Patterson Planning Consultants. County of Perth Senior Planner Susanna Reed, who works on North Perth files, is with us to present an overview of this proposed action. Welcome, Ms. Reed. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Mayor Kasenberg. Good evening, Council. This is two severance applications, as the Mayor's mentioned, submitted by Paul and Ashley Vandenhoven, and Scott Patterson is the agent. The red star shows the location of the property at the north end of Walton Avenue, which is actually north of Listowel in the Wallace Ward. So if we go to the next slide. This is the subject property. It's designated urban fringe in the Perth County official plan, and it's about 1.8 acres in area. So there's one house on this property. You can see it fronts Walton Ave. And the two severance applications propose to sever this 1.8 acre parcel into 4 lots. So the next slide, this is a picture of the single detached residence on the property. And just note that both on the air photo and on the lot, you can see that there are some mature trees on the property, and I'll refer to that again with the conditions. Okay, so the next slide. So this is a helpful slide which shows the 4 lots that are proposed to be created. So they are all around half acre in size. The lot areas are 0.4 acres, 0.3 acres, 0.56 acres, and 0.38 acres. On the next slide, you can see this is file B56 of 22 on the left and B57, 22 on the right. So the one on the first severance severs 0.48 acres, and that's outlined in yellow, the slide on the left, and then retains the remainder of that parcel. And then the second file, B5722, severs 0.38 acres. And then as a result of those two applications, we end up with 4 lots. And they're all proposed to be developed for residential purposes. This area, I think that's the end of the slides. Yeah. Maybe we could go back up to the one that shows the 4 lots. Yeah, that one. Great. Okay, so this area, as I mentioned, is designated urban fringe in the County of Perth official plan. The proposal is to service this area of Walton Avenue, so it will be developed on full municipal services. The conditions are in the planning report. So the department is recommending that North Perth Council recommend to the County of Perth Land Division Committee or its alternate that the both consent files be approved with the conditions listed. And I just want to make a couple of comments about the conditions. So there is a shed on it's essentially on the lot line that's proposed to be created by file B56. So it's on the lot line right on the southerly edge of that new lot line. So there's a recommendation for that consent that a confirmation be received by the municipality of North Perth that the existing drive shed be on the subject property be removed. And then the second condition I'd like to draw your attention to is condition 6. So in your report, it reads that the applicant enter into an agreement with the municipality of North Perth requiring the owner and or purchaser replace any trees that will be removed as a condition of consent. The planning report has been reviewed by Scott Patterson, and he's requesting that that wording be changed. And this wording has been provided to Sarah Carter, and I'll read it for council as well. That the owner shall enter into an agreement with the municipality of North Perth to be prepared by the municipality and registered on title of the severed lands, which shall include the following. A, the owner shall prepare a tree preservation replacement plan for the severed lands to be approved by the municipality of North Perth and where necessary implemented prior to any grading, tree removal, or the issuance of building permits. Such plans shall include, among other matters, the identification of a proposed envelope, work zone, and vegetation to be preserved and planted. And B, that the owner further agrees to implement the approved plan. No changes to the said plan shall be granted except with the prior approval of the municipality of North Perth. So essentially, Scott Patterson is requesting that that the discussion or the condition with regards to the tree agreement be more sophisticated and recognize that there may be a preservation and or a replacement plan. And that it would be easier to do that after the severances have been approved and the building plans are proposed for the 4 lots. So that revised condition is recommended by the Planning Department for Council, the revision for wording number 6, with one change that it be both the severed and the retained lands where that condition would apply. Those are the planning comments, and I'm available for any questions.
Okay, thank you. Do we have, Ms. Carter, do we have the text of the alternate point 6, bullet point 6 for this resolution? Could we put that on the screen? I'm just visual enough to want to see what it says, if we can. All right, colleagues, questions or first comments while Ms. Carter's pulling that up for us. Councillor Rothwell.
Thank you, Mayor Todd, and thank you for the report, Susanna. The question I have for you is the servicing along Walton. Are both sewer and water currently on that site?
My understanding is they're not there now and they're proposed. Is that right? Yeah, they will be.
Further, when will that be?
Anticipated this fall.
Yeah. Through you, Mayor Todd, my suggestion would be that we want to make sure, like, if in fact these lots are to be created in the next couple months, there should be some indication that there'd be no building on here until such time as the servicing is available. And I think that's the concern. Like, we think it's the fall, but correct me if I'm wrong, we've got a pump station that's required to come up here and deal with effluent out of this area. Is that not correct? And how soon is that coming? Like, that's just a question I have. Thank you.
CAO Snell, I think this one's for you, but I certainly understand the context of that one. We'll follow up with you in a minute. Ms. Carter, go ahead.
Actually, I don't know if Lyndon's still on the meeting tonight. It might be even better if Lyndon's available. If he could probably give more specific answers. I know the tender's been let and the construction has begun on the service for that area.
Okay. Is Mr. Couch with us, Deputy Clerk Carter? Okay. Mr. Couch, if you're with us and you can comment, we'd be appreciative.
Yeah, thank you. The tender is let to Moorfield Construction. I don't have the schedule in front of me, but we should have the sewers in place by September, and the pump station should be operable by the end of the year. is the tentative schedule. I can verify that for council and for planning as well in terms of the schedule. I don't have it in front of me, but it is a 2023 project to have the systems up and running.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Reid, yes, go ahead.
Yes, thanks very much to Lyndon, and thanks very much to Councillor Rothwell for the question. So if the municipality would like to be assured that the services are available, it would be possible for condition number 5, which reads, the confirmation be received from the municipality of North Perth that an amendment to the municipality of North Perth implementing zoning bylaw has been adopted to zone the severed and retained lands from rural residential to residential 1, that condition also include, and that a holding zone be added, and that the holding zone be lifted at the time that services are available to the subject property. For your consideration.
Okay. Understand where you're going with that. The wording isn't easily before us, and I wouldn't mind seeing that. Poor Ms. Carter is chasing here. All right. So I think there's sensitivity, if I'm following Councillor Rothwell's question, that we want to be sure that that these are not released into the market before services are fully available, and that there is an effort between now and that point to put it on well or other septic systems kind of thing. What's council's wish on this? Is there general agreement that we want to make sure that they don't build until services are available? Councillor Duncan?
I'd be comfortable with adding the holding zone provision to the severance application, yeah.
Okay. Can we find an example of wording of that? I don't know. I wouldn't mind seeing the wording again.
I can say it again if you want to type. Yeah. So at the end of condition number 5.
Yeah.
And so semicolon, and that a holding zone be added to the residential zone 1, requiring that full services be available to the subject property prior to the holding zone being lifted.
Okay. That's helpful. Let's see, who else has a question? A CEO Snell comment?
Can we just add the term municipal services?
Yeah, I wrote down municipal services. I just assumed that was your intention. Okay. Anyone else with comments or questions about this one? I have two, and I guess that the first relates to the issues of flooding that have, I believe, had some impact on this land in this area, and whether that too is being remediated soon enough, or whether we're going to put something in the deeds or transfer of titles that indicate that there is a risk of flooding in this area. That's my first question. And my second pertains to the tree plan and the clause that was suggested as an alternative here. And there is an implication in that tree plan clause that there's a means by which we can adjudicate an approval from the municipality, but I'm not sure that I know enough about that. Do we have a policy or a way that we review tree preservation plans to decide whether it's adequate to the municipal government? Ms. Reid, sure.
Thank you very much for the question. So the conditions are proposed as a condition of the two consent applications. So what would be required if this condition wasn't added to B5622 and B5722, both the consents, is that there be a tree preservation and replacement plan prepared to be approved by the municipality, and that would be required as a condition of the consent. So the condition would require that the plan exist and that the owner enter into an agreement to implement the plan before the severance were finally approved. And so the tool that would be available is the agreement itself.
Okay. I think I see where that's going, but my question is, they bring forward a plan, and how does the municipal government adjudicate that it's a good plan versus a bad plan? Who makes that call? CAO Snell, maybe you can help me understand the process here.
Thank you, Mayor. So obviously we don't have an arborist on staff, so we have relied on usually third-party review of the tree planting plans if necessary, depending on the types and species that we find. But if they aren't complex enough, that we have called outside expertise in to review the plan for us to make sure it is appropriate and adequate. And if so, we would base the agreement on that plan.
Okay, that's helpful. I didn't know the process, so that's useful. Councillor Rothwell?
Thanks very much, Mayor Todd. And just further on that point, if we look at page 169 of our agenda package, so we have, there's 2 severed and 2 retained lands here. So my question is whether on the tree planting, if we can actually deal with the tree planting or agreement on both the severed and the retained, or is it only the severed lands?
Through you, Mayor Kisenberg, yes, this is a lovely question. And we received the planning, one of the recent amendments to the Planning Act allows for the conditions to be applied to both the retained and the severed lands. So before Bill 109, I believe it was only possible to condition the severed parcel. And now it's possible to condition the retained lands as well. So the consultant, Scott Patterson, has suggested that it just applied to the severed parcel. And if council was willing to proceed with this condition, it would be possible to condition both the severed and the retained lands.
Councillor Rothwell,
thank you. Thank you very much for the clarification. I think it's imperative that the agreement is both on the severed and retained as required, because if you look at page 169, the majority of the trees are actually on the it says other lands, I think is what it says, which would be a retained land. So if we don't have that, there's no guarantee that those trees, like some of them will be gone, let's be clear, like in terms of a building lot and so on, or a building envelope. But there's a lot more trees there that are, on that significant lot there that I think if there is an issue of concern, it would be, well, it's on all the lots, but there's the majority of the trees are on that further, the most southerly of those 4 lots. So okay. I would encourage council to ensure that we are dealing with all 4 of these lots.
Okay, thank you. Council, what's your wish on this one? Is there general agreement with Councillor Rothwell's premise that we should apply the tree preservation and planting plan to all 4 of these lots? I'm seeing enough nodding heads here to suggest that that's the desire of council. So there might need to be minor wording changes to the text that's there to accomplish that task. I don't know if you can pull that off, Deputy Clerk Carter, or whether Ms. Reid wants to offer comments to Ms. Carter to help her with that one.
Thank you very much, Mayor Kisenberg. It appears that Ms. Carter has made that change, so she's added severed and retained.
All right, great, thank you. CAO Snell, you just, thanks.
The owner shall prepare the tree preservation plan for the severed and retained lands.
Both those.
Okay, how are we doing? Did we get there? Okay. Any other comments or questions on this then? There's some revised terms and conditions here that we're applying to this based on inputs from both the proponent's planner and our own instincts. And certainly there's a number of other conditions. Anyone have any concerns about proceeding with considering this then? Okay, I'm not seeing any hand waving at this point, so I have a resolution that essentially says that the Council of the Municipality of North Perth receives a report entitled Consent Application Files B56-2022 and B57-2022 affecting lands described as Park Lot 5, Plan 290, Part 3, Plan 44R 5724, 1030 Walton Avenue North, Wallace Ward, Municipality of North Perth. Can I call for a mover on this one? Councillor Nordum, thank you. And our seconder will be Councillor Andreessen, thank you. Any further discussion or debate on that resolution? It's receiving the report. Okay, let's have that vote done. Okay, and that's carried. Next, then we have the resolution which includes the conditions, and we've made a few changes here, so I'm not sure I'm easily able to read all of them at this point. My handwriting is looking a little dense. But here's the crux of the resolution that the Council of the Municipality of North Perth recommends that the County of Perth Land Division Committee or its designate approve consent application files B56-2022 and B57-2022 affecting lands described as Park Lot 5, Plan 290, Part 3, Plan 44R, 5724, 1030 Walton Avenue North, Wallace Ward, Municipality of North Perth, subject to the following conditions. And there are a few, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 conditions, one of which is a condition applied to a specific B56 file. I think we've got the revised condition per Ms. Carter's work. So can I call for mover? Thank you, Councillor Blazek. Councillor Nordum will be our seconder on this one. Further discussion or debate or comment on this? Seeing none, let's have that vote. And that is carried. Thank you very much. All right, let's move forward then. Thank you, Ms. Reid, for attending tonight and helping us with that one. Next, we're going to go to item 5.7, which is reports to the Manager of Operations. And this evening, we do not have, I've already done that. Wow, it must be getting late. Okay, let's move forward to item 6 then. That's where we want to go, not backwards, forwards. Item 6 is on our table now. For item 6.1, councillors, are there any reports you would like to ask of staff or of our committees? Councillor Andreessen.
Thank you, through you, Mayor Kaysenberg. This isn't really a report. It's just, I'm just having trouble hearing. And it's really about the podium. It's not so much our microphones. It's really inconsistent at the podium. So I know we've discussed this in the past, but I just wondered if IT can continue their good work, but look at some more possibilities around how to have the sound at the podium be more clear.
Thank you. Yes, I can certainly we can ask staff to draw it to IT's attention. I know that as I was sitting out in the hallway while I was absent from the meeting, one of our IT guys came down to try to address podium microphone placement. So certainly there's some issue. I believe that microphone is often moved aside, and part of the challenge is it needs to be spoken head on to. It's one of those kind of microphones.
Yeah, it is a microphone that you really require almost to, in the music world, we'd say eat it. But it's problematic because everyone uses it differently and it's really inconsistent.
Right.
So just looking for some solutions that could be more consistent, not just for us in the chambers, but I'm sure that those looking at it on YouTube or on the channel may be finding it a challenge.
Yep, thank you. CAO Snell, you'll take a note of this for gentle action. Thank you. Anyone else have a report request at this hour? Councillor Rothwell.
Thanks very much, Mayor Todd and Council. The request I have is in partial report, but not necessarily from our North Perth staff. I had the opportunity to speak with one of the local school bus operators. I know he's also spoken with the deputy mayor on this issue. John Chapman from Nuri Coach raised the issue of automated cameras on the arms of school buses to directly affect the automated penalty system, which the county enforces through provincial offenses. This matter came before County Council last January, and staff did come back with a report last August, and the matter has been referred through to the Association of Municipalities of Ontario. And the issue is that this matter has been discussed by the school bus operators throughout Ontario, and it's gone directly through to the province, and the province has said that they've done everything they can. It's up to upper-tier municipalities and single-tier municipalities to address this issue. The reason I'm bringing this forward is that this past week in particular, because unfortunately this happens regularly, where individuals are speeding through stopped school buses with lights flashing and children potentially crossing in front of the bus and in harm's way if a car is going through. Cars are going through and children are at risk. And this past week in Moncton, an adult who was on the other side of the road waiting for their child realized that a car was coming and was not stopping. They stepped in front of the car in order to save their child from being hit. I encourage our county councillors to make this matter come before county council, and encourage not only our county council, but in fact our province of Ontario through our MPP to address this matter now and not wait until we have a fatality. This isn't getting all emotional, but I will. Our son was hit by someone that went around a school bus. Thankfully, he is fine, and he has been fine. And this matter that I'm talking about would not have addressed the issue of our son because he was hit on the gravel shoulder side of the school bus. So I encourage our councillors at the county, as well as AMO staff and the province of Ontario to address this matter. The school buses are critical in getting our children in rural areas and urban areas to and from our schools safely. And we need to do everything we can to ensure that happens. And that includes all of us as drivers. You know, there's only so many things a school bus driver can do. They can make sure that traffic is stopped both ways, obviously, before children are going across. But unfortunately, blow-bys, as they're called, are happening frequently. And it's not a matter that is over-exaggerated. Certainly, if Mr. Chapman was here, he would go into detail as he did at County Council last January. So I encourage through to our county councillors to bring this matter forward to the county, encourage and support this matter to be addressed as soon as possible. And in fact, encourage our MPP to take action through the Ministry of Transportation and the Ministry of the Attorney General to ensure that this matter is dealt with forthwith. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Rothwell. As the county councillor who actually raised the issue originally back in January of 2021, I want to say, I'm certainly very sensitive to the issue myself and have followed the proceedings in the province. I think the challenge that's being faced is that while there's a toolkit, it's just that. It's pretty vague and has been issued by the province to support this issue. And so the consequence is that the County of Perth, staff at the County of Perth have been watching and waiting to see how other jurisdictions become early adopters on this matter. And I, you can certainly question the strategy, whether that's wise or whether we should strike out on our own and try to be the early adopter in this matter. But at this point, there's a certain amount of watching that's going on with other larger municipalities that have deeper pockets too, to see how they implement and what they do with regards to this. Mr. Chapman was supposed to be a delegate at a recent county council meeting, and he did not attend. So it's important to recognize that. And perhaps Deputy Mayor Kellum, who serves as Deputy Warden at the county, if you want to make any comments on this, you're welcome to at this point.
Yes, thank you, through you, Mayor Caseberry. Thank you for the comments. I know it hit home, obviously, with you, and this has been addressed. And just as recently as this week, I've had several conversations with Mr. Chapman, and he has been in communication with the county. And yes, they are working as quick as possible, even though it is frustrating. At our last police meeting, one of our members thought that we could just put any camera in there and to monitor it, just to speed things up. And we're made clear that that cannot happen. So we are on it, maybe not as fast as we want to be, but it is, and I made it very clear to Mr. Chapman that we will do our best to move this forward as quick and as strong as we can in the very near future. Thank you.
I appreciate this, I do. But here's the issue. In the Avon-Maitland District School Board and Huron-Perth Catholic District School Board. So we have two counties, and in Perth County we have the upper tier in Stratford, or single tier in Stratford and St. Mary's. That's 4 jurisdictions that have to pass bylaws. Just think for a moment, in all of Ontario, how many municipalities have to pass bylaws to make this happen? It is mind-numbing. I mean, I could have pulled out the stats, and frankly, I've got them, but I don't need to do that. I think the province of Ontario needs to show leadership on this issue and do what needs to be done. They talk about their toolkit, fine. Well, I can tell you, in further discussions with Councillor Chapman, it was a direct result of a coroner's inquest, a death of a child, that stop arms were put on school buses. Like that. Literally, the coroner's information came out at the beginning of March. Every school bus, independent school bus operator had to have stop arms installed, retrofitted on all of their fleet by the end of March break. That's from John Chapman directly. So I am saying this can be mandated provincially, as I understand, and should be, to save all of the time and effort from every jurisdiction that would have to pass a bylaw to deal with this. So I'm just encouraging and supporting whatever has to be done sooner rather than later. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Councillor Rothwell. I sense the challenge that lies ahead here. I will say personally that I agree with your premise that the province should be getting involved in this. And the province should be the one that brings the money to the table on this one as well, because there's a financial component to this that is not insignificant. And I think that that's among the things that creates drag in the municipal system is when we see essentially a new mandate that has no money attached to it, right? And so, far be it from me to offer advice, but perhaps you want to consider offering a notice of motion pertaining to this council creating some kind of action on this.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Councillor Andreessen, I saw your hand up briefly. I want to be careful about taking this too much further because, yeah.
Confused about how, if someone could explain, it's about the enforcement part that the county would have to do in terms of reading the camera pictures and such to determine and charge whoever is passing. Is that what it is? I'm not sure. Thank you.
So as I understand directly through you, Mr. Chair, is that it's the administrative monetary policy system. So it's the same legislative jurisdiction dealing with red light cameras. Okay. It's that when a picture is taken of a vehicle with their license plate and so on, the ticket goes directly to the vehicle
Offender.
owner.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter who's driving, it's to the owner of the vehicle. So it's the same legislation that applies. And the issue is that in the case of the County of Perth, we haven't got the policies, administrative monetary policy in place to deal with that. And like there are mechanisms to deal with taking the data from the camera and putting it through and so on. In Ottawa region, it's already in operation. They had a pilot project in Waterloo region. So it's there, it's dealt with, and so on. Yes, there is money at stake, and there's other challenges and so on. Certainly, we can certainly invite Councillor John Chapman he's on the board of directors for the independent school bus operators. They have much more information about this. But in terms of where the money should come from and so on, I think we can certainly ensure that that's dealt with at the province can, because they hold the purse strings for school bus transportation for all of our school boards. Mm-hmm. So it's an easy line to draw in terms of who should be responsible for this. And whether or not the county keeps the money through the administrative monetary policy system is neither here nor there. Really, it's not. So
I think the upshot, as I understand it, and please, my county council colleagues, there are a number of steps that lie ahead. One of the first is this administrative monetary penalty system, which Perth County does not have in place. And so a lot of the work that has to be done here has to happen at the county and the interface between the county and the province. I think, again, not to give you advice, but there might be an opportunity for a resolution from this council that calls on the province to step in here and do something, right? Okay. But that's one of the possibilities. Anyone else have a report request? Okay. Let's move to item 7 then. We have 2 items of correspondence, which invites our action. For item 7.1, we have a request from the Kinsman Club of Listowel requesting various road segment closures to support the 2023 Paddy Fest Parade on March 18th, 2023. Council, is there any objection to considering a motion to enable this request? Seeing none, I have a resolution drafted that will support this as follows: that the Council of the Municipality of North Perth approves the road closure request from the Kinsman Club of Listowel for the 2023 Paddy Fest Parade to be held on Saturday, March 18th, 2023 at 11 a.m. for the following route: beginning off of Elm Avenue up to Main Street, west on Main Street to Wallace Avenue, north on Wallace Avenue to Elizabeth Street, east on Elizabeth Street, and ending at the Legion parking lot. And that North Perth Public Works, Fire, OPP, and Perth County EMS be advised of the event. Can I call for a move for Councillor Richardson? Thank you. And Councillor Nordum will be our seconder. Any discussion or debate on that one? Seeing none, let's have that vote. And that is carried. And next up, the Kinsmen are also concerned that they're going to make a lot of noise and don't want to fall astray of the noise bylaw. So I have a resolution for that effect as follows: that the Council of the Municipality of North Perth approves an exemption to any timing regulations found in the noise bylaw for activities generated by Paddy Fest on Friday, March 17th, 2023 until 1:30 a.m. and Saturday, March 18th, 2023 until 8:30 p.m. and that Council directs staff to advise relevant parties of this exemption in order to avoid unintended enforcement. Can I call for a mover on this one? Councillor Duncan, thank you. Councillor Blazek will be our seconder. Any discussion or debate on this one? Seeing none, let's have that vote. And that is carried. Thank you. That allows us to move over to consideration of bylaws that have been recommended to us for action under Section 8 of our agenda. For item 8.1, Council is asked to bring to third reading bylaw number 135-2022, which provides for the construction of the Partridge Municipal Drain with final cost allocations to affected parties. Any questions before we consider this matter? All right, the resolution reads as follows: that bylaw number 135-2022, being a bylaw to provide for drainage works in the municipality of North Perth and the county of Perth be read a third time and be finally passed, and said bylaw be signed by the mayor and the clerk and sealed with the seal of the corporation. Can I call for a mover? Councillor Duncan, thank you. Councillor Nordholm will be our seconder. Thank you very much. I have to remember that Councillor Anstedt's still out there. Any discussion or debate on this one? Seeing none, let's have that vote. And that is carried. Thank you. Next up, another an agreement here. This is an amending agreement as follows. Bylaw number 14-2023, being a bylaw to authorize the execution of an amending agreement between the municipality of North Perth and Dalmich Holdings Limited, be introduced, read, and considered read a first, second, and third time, and be finally passed, and said bylaw be signed by the mayor and the clerk and sealed with the seal of the corporation. Can I call for a mover on this one? Deputy Mayor Kellum, thank you. And Councillor Blazek will be our seconder. Thanks. Any discussion or debate on that one? Councillor Rothwell.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Just a question in terms of, is this for the next phase of the subdivision? Is this what this agreement's about, or?
CAO Snell, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for the question, Councillor Rothwell. We already signed a subdivision agreement with the developers for the next phase of the subdivision. Unfortunately, it's been registered. Unfortunately, MTO had requested a change in the draft conditions around the conditions dealing with the MTO, and just the way they were wording, they could not clear them. So they changed one of the conditions, and so basically we're just re-registering the county's conditions that have been amended as required by the MTO.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay. We had that moved and seconded, or no? We did. There we go. Any further discussion or debate? Seeing none, let's have that vote. And that's carried. Thank you. And item 8.3, Council is asked to authorize an amending agreement between His Majesty the King and right of the Province of Ontario by the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing and the municipality pertaining to various revisions to an earlier contract associated with the grant of funds from the province related to intake 3 of the municipal modernization project. Any questions before we consider this one? CEO Snell, did you want to offer a brief comment on this one?
As announced at Roma by the minister, they have extended the timeline on the municipal modernization program intake 3. It's simply an agreement to make that extension happen.
Right, thank you. So I have the resolution then as follows. Bylaw 17-2023 being a bylaw to authorize the signing of an amending agreement with His Majesty the King in right of the Province of Ontario, represented by the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing, be considered read a first, second, and third time and be finally passed, and that the said bylaw be signed by the mayor and the clerk and sealed with the seal of the corporation. Councillor Rothwell is our mover for this one. Councillor Richardson, our seconder. Thank you. Any discussion or debate? Seeing none, let's have that vote. And that is carried. Thank you very much. That brings us to agenda item number 9. Are there any councillors wishing leave to give notice of motion this evening? Councillor Rothwell, you want to give us a hint or no?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So at a subsequent meeting, I'll undertake your advice. I haven't got anything printed to this point for council's consideration, but I assure you I will have something for consideration at a later point. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Let's move then to item number 10 on our agenda. For item 10.1, are there any announcements that would be of benefit to our community or that reflect well on North Perth at this time? And that includes Councillor Anstead. If you've got anything too, we'd be happy to hear it. Councillor Andreessen, let's start with you.
Yes, thank you. Through you, Mayor Kasenberg. I just I'm announcing to council an invitation to join us. We have a council team that's going to be participating in our upcoming Coldest Night of the Year, which is an event that is part of the United Way. And this event is going to be raising money for the Hope Links facility, which helps the homeless and the hungry here in our community. For those of you who have joined us, we really appreciate it. We're going to have some fun that day. It's on February the 25th on a Saturday evening from about 5 o'clock to about 6. If you're not able to join us, we would also appreciate any sponsorship that would go to this great cause here in our community. So let us know if you're interested in participating, and we look forward to your support. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Andreessen. Anyone else with announcements? We're not seeing any. Okay, let's move on to agenda item number 11. We have no matters for consideration in a closed session meeting of council this evening. That means that we can skip past item 12 because we have nothing to return and report on. The council, therefore, as a mandated good practice, acts near the end of its meeting agenda to confirm all of its actions and business of its meeting through what is called the confirmatory bylaw. Again, I'm going to step out of the room. Deputy Mayor Kellum is going to help me out here and take over this section of the agenda for the next few moments. Deputy Mayor Kellum. Thank you.
Thank you, and please note that Mayor Kiesenberg has left the council chambers due to pecuniary injuries. And we are nearing the end of this council meeting. And in front of me, council, we do have a resolution that reads as follows. That bylaw number 16-2023 being a bylaw to confirm generally previous actions of the council of the municipality of North Perth be introduced, read, and considered read a first, second, and third time, and be finally passed, and that the said bylaw be signed by the deputy mayor and the clerk and sealed with the seal of the corporation. Can I ask Councillor Anstett to make that motion?
Yes, I would make that motion. Thank you.
Moved by Councillor Anstett and second by Councillor Andreessen. Can we have the vote, please? I am in favor. And that is carried. Thank you. Please invite the mayor back in.
All right, we've hit that magic hour. It's a little later than I thought. Sometimes I forecast how long these meetings will go, and this one went longer than I thought. So, all right, councillors, we've taken action and completed our deliberation on the business that did come before us tonight. I have the good fortune of having a motion to adjourn as follows: that the council meeting adjourns at 9:17 p.m. To meet again for general council business on Monday, February 27th, 2023 at 7 p.m. Of course, the family holiday is next Monday. Moved by Councillor Rothwell, thank you, and seconded by Councillor Richardson. That's not debatable, so let's have that vote. And that is carried. Our next regular council meeting is Monday, February 27th. Until that date, this meeting is adjourned.